Let's talk about death. Welcome. This is 2020 Fix. So, if some of you might follow me on my Instagram, this is my handle. I have talked about how I'm obsessed with near death experiences, and I'm not in this episode talking about physical death, but I'm talking about the you that has to die in order to change the course of your life. That is, if you are dissatisfied with it. I just happened to get to a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Story time. So I was living in Brooklyn. I'd had this apartment forever. This was maybe my third apartment. It wasn't in the city. So prior to that, I was in Manhattan. This was in one of those walk-ups in Brooklyn. I was in Crown Heights. Interesting area, very mixed, lots of culture, lots of Caribbean culture. Long story short, the Brooklyn Museum was like here, but like we'd still get random shootings in grocery stores. So weird. There was a point where I'd been there for so long, I'd had that apartment for so long. I got really like sick of the routine of waking up and looking at the same thing every day, looking at the same dresser every day, looking at the same window, hearing the same sounds from my neighbors, complaining about the same things, the rickety floors, the bath tiles that weren't the same color, the fact that I didn't have enough countertop space, the noise that spilled into my studio. It was a studio apartment from the street. The routine of that really started to piss me off. I mean, we could go deeper into all the things that happened in that apartment, but I was so tired of living a life that felt like a lie to me. And eventually, I just started asking questions. I was just like, what am I? What am I? Who am I? And through watching YouTube videos, reading books, all the advice pointed to just keep asking, fix, and you will find the answer. And kind of like how I found my solution to weight loss, I was led, right? I was led to a book, Bright Line Eating, for my weight loss journey. In this case, I was led to Rhonda Byrne's The Greatest Secret. She's obviously the creator of The Secret, the documentary, and then later the book, and then all of these amazing books afterwards. But I knew I needed to get my hands on this book. Before then, I had read CIA documents, like declassified CIA documents. I was in it. I was like, I'm going to figure out who and what the fuck I am, because I don't think I was brought on this planet to live this, Like, I was just like, this is so not me. I get my hands on this book, and literally the first 2 pages, I read one line. I mean, I've gone back to that line over and over and over again, and it's not a special line. It's sort of one of those truisms that you hear all the time, but kind of feel trite because you hear them, but you don't understand what's supposed to be life-changing about it. I just read a line and it went something like, you are not your thoughts, you are not your body, you are the thing that is looking through your eyes, that is feeling through your skin, that is tasting with your tongue, essentially. And that thing, it's consciousness, right? It's awareness. But that is the same for all of us. And that is how we are all one. And that is how we are all connected. And it just clicked. And I had encountered that consciousness. I had encountered that awareness that never changed, that essence of me throughout my life, where I would pause, almost dissociate, allow myself to be the watcher and to see me, or what I thought was me, as something else. I knew that that was a being called Fikile, but I was watching. I was watching it. And actually, this happened on the 6th of December, 2023. I remember it so clearly because I went to the mirror and I looked at my form and for the first time made a choice to not identify that there is a fly on my forehead. For the first time, recognize that that wasn't who I am, that form, that being was a vehicle through which God was experiencing this planet. And it was so profound to me that for a long time I didn't address myself in first person. I'd just be like, Fikile this, Fikile that, or, the body this. It wasn't for like a long time, actually. It was maybe a couple weeks, but long enough. I'd never done that before. In fact, I thought people who address themselves in third person were kind of weird, But that is to say, finding out that I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my body. However, I was identified to my thoughts and to my body. And so when I say that an old part of you or you have to die, I mean your identity, the person who you know yourself to be, that has to die. And that is you. That is the you that you've come to know. Dr. Joe says it in an interesting way. He says, you're just a sensation. The you that you know to be you is just a feeling. I heard that for the first time and I was like, surely I'm too complicated. Surely I'm too nuanced and layered to be reduced to an emotion, to a feeling. But the more I started to identify thoughts, feelings, behavioral patterns that were a part of me that weren't serving me and realizing that I had to do away with them, then I realized, oh yes, it's true. I am victimization. I am abandonment itself, as opposed to abundance and empowerment, which I was trying to be, but I was trying to be from a thought level. I wasn't trying to be from like the truth, And also, when you're trying to be something from a thought level, you have to understand that you've amassed an identity built on different experiences, which have built different habits and emotional set points for you. That conscious desire of changing, of being abundant, being empowered, being boundaried, being honest, is so minuscule compared to the behemoth that has amassed itself in your subconscious making, which is who you are, the behemoth that is your nervous system. And as I say this, I really hope I'm making sense, because I watched someone compare life to a game, like literally like a game with NPCs, with different levels, with bosses, with lessons. He made a really compelling comparison, but in it he also said that the more you read ancient texts, biblical, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Hamitic teachings, the Kabbalah, the more you realize that they're saying the same thing. And then you also realize that they're not trying to be mysterious. They're not trying to be difficult to understand or hard to conceptualize. Language is a result of thought. Thought is of the flesh. It's of this dimension. And so the limitation is language. The limitation is that We can't express the infinite of what consciousness is, awareness is, God is, the universe is with words, because this experience is inherently limited, and so is the language that is a result of it. So I hated going to sleep and waking up in the same place, feeling the same way. I was heavy with feelings of regret and guilt, victimization, unworthiness, and something had to change. There was no ways I was going to continue to live like that for the rest of my life. And it's so interesting, this guy who compared life to a game. I'll put his YouTube channel up here for reference. He also said that when you have your spiritual awakening, it's a profoundly boring experience. And it's so true. There's no lightning bolt moment. There's no like electrical zap. I mean, sometimes you get those in meditation, but like the thing that woke me up was 2 sentences in a book and realizing that I'm an observer. It's a perspective change. And he alluded to that too. It's a change in perspective that you can never unsee. And so he talked about the limitation of language, and he talked about spiritual experiences being profoundly boring. Spiritual awakenings, rather, being profoundly boring. In that disdain of my life, and then in the waking up, I still got evicted, by the way. So 2 months later, I got evicted from that apartment and I came home. But by that point, it wasn't the coming back home. It was sort of like a midway. I moved out of the apartment. So for the first time in 9 years, I didn't have a place to stay in New York or LA or anywhere. And I didn't know what I was going back for, but I knew I had to go back and maybe wrap things up. Maybe that's why I went back. I didn't know what I was going back for. Oh yeah, I had a pitch competition for a tech thing, which I ended up winning $25,000. That's the only thing that brought me back to the United States. Otherwise, I would have moved back home months earlier, like maybe 6 months earlier. So, either way, I would have come back home. But being sick of Brooklyn and being sick of the vibration that I was in New York City, knowing it is kind of an awesome city in a lot of ways, but I was really not where I wanted to be energetically, which means I wasn't going to live the life in New York that I wanted, and that I absolutely deserved. Some people are like, do you think you could make a go at it again? Maybe. I'm not really interested unless it's work. And right now, I don't even have representation in the United States. But that being sick and tired and asking those questions and waking up to who and what I truly am led me down a path of that version of myself, like dying. You know that saying that you can't tell a fish what like if you ask a fish what water is, they'll be like, I don't know. And the fact that I was starting to get that I am the body of survival, right? I had to then get rid of that programming, that setting of fix, and get into a new one, which literally felt like death. So in April of 2024, I think it was, I was moving out of an ex-boyfriend's apartment because I'd been evicted, right? And the plan was never to live with him. We broke up and whatever. And I remember it was my birthday. And he was sitting there watching TV as I was like packing my stuff and putting them in a U-Haul. And I think it was a child in me. I was done. I could have just gone downstairs and driven off, but I just wanted to tell him that it was my birthday. And he just looked up at me and was like, oh, happy birthday. And continued watching probably a football game. But I remember feeling so minimized, feeling regret that I'd asked, feeling so victimized, because that's what I wanted. I wanted him to minimize that moment for me. I wanted him to make me feel like shit. I wanted him to make me feel unimportant because that's exactly what I was with him for, to confirm what I thought about myself. Anyway, that was the kick into unknown territory, which for me, kind of a control freak. I mean, I think a lot of firstborn daughters have this habit of being in control and wanting to be certain about everything. It's good in some ways, but it's definitely not conducive to faith and surrender to God. And that's kind of what kicked me into that new way of being and experiencing. So at the time, I was still running clubs. I'd just gotten this $25,000 grant, so I was happy about that. My company would live another 3 months. And for my birthday, I bought myself a 7-day retreat at the Dallas, Texas Dr. Joe Advanced Retreat. I was like, couldn't it be like Costa Rica or something? But no, God wanted me to go to hot ass Dallas. So I was like, okay, in preparation for this retreat so that I can get as much of it as I can, I am going to do the thing. I'm going to just start meditating every day. And in fact, I started meditating twice a day. That's when energy started to move through my body. That's when I started having the shakes, and I thought I was going crazy, really. But by the time I got to the retreat, I remember it was at the Gaylord, and the driveway is really long. It's expansive. It's, Texas is wide roads. Just everything is wide. No one walks. It's wide and it's hot and it's sparse. And as we're driving in, I'm just thinking, I hope this works. I didn't really know what it would work for, but I was just like, I hope this works. I wanted that lightning bolt. I wanted that awakening. I wanted the solution. My business was going down. And, in the 3 months, that 25K that I won, I spent 20K on product, which I never actually got. But I just wanted it to work. And the workings of God are not going to look like the way you think things should work. Basically, after the retreat, everything collapsed around me. That metaphor of burnt bridges, yeah, that was me. Because I had shaken up my life so much and walked away from that crap that I was firmly in the unknown. So again, I didn't have a place to stay in New York for the first time in 10 years. So I'm leaving this Dallas retreat. I booked a one-way ticket to North Carolina. One of my girlfriends was getting her PhD there and she lived there. And I stayed with her and her daughter for a month. In fact, it was indefinite. She was like, you can stay here for as long as you need. And I was lost because even if I did want to go back to the studio in Brooklyn with the rickety floors and the mismatched tiles, I couldn't. It was gone. I'd been evicted. Even if I wanted to go back to that ex-boyfriend, there was no chance in hell. Like, even if I wanted to go back to the shitty life that I was living in New York, I had blown it all up somehow. And now the business that I thought would lead me to my gold was collapsing almost right in front of my eyes. I was watching it happen. I mean, it was slow. It was slow and painful, but I kind of just let it happen. I let it die, and somehow I knew that North Carolina was the place that I needed to be. I was in a place called Greensboro. It feels just like it sounds. It's green, it's small, it's quaint, but I did my walking meditations there. I started to build a new version of myself. At that time, as much as I was letting my business die, I thought I would be able to revive it. So maybe 2, 3 weeks into my month-long stay, I started to tell my friend, no, I think New York is my next place to be. Like, I think I still need to be back in New York. Like, North Carolina is nice. I can see myself maybe moving here, but New York is calling me back. And I think when I get there, I'll figure it out. So I got myself a little room, really, at one of the ladies who had helped me get into other apartments. And I was like, I'll figure it out from there. So I go back to New York and I move into this lady's room in Queens. It was nice, I didn't feel unsafe. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out from here. 4 days into that stay, I would find myself texting my landlord, essentially like, I'm not coming back home tonight because I'm in hospital. I fell off my bike. And I just remember feeling like, did I just come to New York to fall off my bike? What the fuck? Literally, I moved back on a Sunday and I fell either on the Wednesday or Thursday, whatever day the 20th of September was in 2024. And that was also my dad's birthday, my dad's heavenly birthday, because he's late. That event of me landing myself in hospital, being alone during recovery, led me to decide to come back home to South Africa, where more things died and disintegrated, right? So I finally let go of my business. I finally filed for bankruptcy. I left everything behind and I let it burn. Someone asked me an interesting question. When you were failing, it was an interview about failing forward. What did that moment feel like? The moment of failure. And for me, it felt liberating because I was admitting defeat. I think I felt more like a failure when I was like clinging on to the business or clinging on to the relationship or clinging on to the apartment or clinging on to the acting career. I think I felt like more of a failure when I was doing that than when I admitted defeat. When I admitted to myself that these were unsuccessful attempts and it was time to stop, there was immense freedom there. So even though it does feel like I've lived 9 lives, I mean, all of those 9 lives kind of felt the same. I was reliving the same patterns, meeting the same people, just different faces, the same situations, different faces, the same challenges, different places, because I was the same. But I would say that moment between December 6th, 2023 and basically December 2024 was me letting go of an old self. And that's what needs to happen. So what happens is you decide to change. You pray. You pray to God. You say you want to break through. You want to change your life, which is absolutely possible. Someone else asked me about like the drama and the chaos that had marred my life. And like what it was like to just live like that and why I was living like that over and over again. And my answer was, it just never occurred to me that I could change. There's just been so much sameness that I figured my life would always be dramatic, that I would always have bad luck, that the universe would always forget about me, that I was meant to be left behind. That's just the story. So when you let go of a story that is no longer serving you, yes, expect chaos. It's going to be chaotic. And that's not a bad thing. In my case, I've never spent a night out on the streets. I've always had enough to eat, thank God. I might not have had enough money for a coffee or even the subway sometimes, but somehow I was provided for and taken care of. So when that old part of you does begin to die, it can be scary, and that's where a lot of us turn back. That's where we're like, whoop, this blackness that I'm seeing in front of me, I don't know what that is. I think I'm just gonna go to the devil I know. I'm just gonna go hang out back here. I don't even know where I was going. I remember this is after my separation and I was going through it. I remember talking to a therapist and saying, you know what? I usually have something on my future calendar. Like I see my future as this sort of calendar timeline. And as long as there's something that I have to look forward to, I know I can wake up the next day so I can like get to that point. Now there's nothing. It's just blackness. And she was like, well, you have to make space for the fact that you don't know what you don't know. There's unknowns that you're not privy to right now, right? There's things that have happened to you in your past that you couldn't have planned, awesome things that came, but you didn't know were coming. So we have to allow space for those possibilities. And when I think about that, I mean, it did bring me solace. She was a great therapist. It brought me solace at the time and it helped me wake up the next day, right? And I definitely had ideations. Honey, I wanted to throw myself in front of the train. I cycled onto FDR in a muumuu. It was bad. It was bad. Like, I would cycle from First Street to 135th Street in a muumuu because I was just like, I don't give a fuck. I need to get this pain out of my body. But it wasn't physical. My issues weren't physical. My issues were spiritual. I wasn't living in alignment with my true being. The reason I was attracting all of these shitty, mediocre, dramatic situations is because I was in a shitty, mediocre, dramatic vibration. And I'd always been since I can remember. And so when you do hit the unknown, just remember the unknown is only scary because you're projecting fear into it, but the unknown can also bring awesomeness into your life. And the disintegration that you undoubtedly will go through is a part of that process. You have to die. You have to lose your old life and get a new one. A lot of near-death experiencers talk about this. They talk about gaining the awareness that their bodies are not really who they are. They talk about changing your thoughts and beliefs and how that is in your control. That is how you create in this world. They talk about all sorts of things. I'm kind of low-key obsessed with near-death experiences, but you don't have to die physically. You don't have to die to be born again, essentially. And that's what being born again is. I think it's in the book of John. Is it in the book of John? Yeah, that's what being born again is. And look around, realize you're always provided for. Make an effort to know thyself, to know who and really what you are. I don't know if that made sense, but you know what I mean. Make an effort. The more you ask, the more you'll get answered. And you will get an answer. It's just how the world works. The force that is beating your heart is waiting for you to come back and lean on it. I cry in almost every single one of my meditations because I'm so grateful for the life that I have now. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm so light. I'm so free. I don't always get my way, right? Like I audition, I don't get parts. I have crushes. People don't love me back. Those things still happen, but I don't identify with them as who I am. I know who I am. I'm a child of God. I am a fractal of God. I am God itself having an experience through this being that we know as Fix. And I can always go back to that as truth. And I'm so grateful that I can, because it makes this life experience fun. It makes it bearable. It makes it tolerable. It makes it beautiful. And I want that for everybody. Interestingly, I thought alcohol was giving that to me. I thought that that was what alcohol was giving to me, making life more tolerable, bearable, interesting, enjoyable. Ain't that about a bitch? Literally replacing God with alcohol. But free will. He gives you free will. And you can choose to take your free will and choose awesomeness, or you can choose to take your free will and drown your sorrows in Prosecco. Either way, you're still loved. You're so loved. This has been 2020 Fix.